Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a review of a Hall of Fame Amouage fragrance as far as I'm concerned. It is the one and only Overture Man. So, first of all, this bottle came straight from Harrods. So when this came out in 2019, I rushed to Harrods and had it shipped directly to me here in Texas. And so you'll notice my bottle is the one that actually doesn't say Overture down here on the bottom. It says it on the side, which very quickly after they released this, maybe a year or two, it was change of packaging by the new creative director, Salman the Fishman, and they basically put it down below, right? There are some people that have reviewed this that have said the new bottles have some performance issues. I have absolutely zero performance issues with this bottle. In fact, I would go so far as to dub this fragrance the Orange Beast. I know everyone knows about Amouage's Blue Beast Interlude, right, which I will do a review on. This will get a Hall of Fame Amouage review one day from me. This is the Orange Beast as far as I'm concerned. And so I've never smelled the newer bottles, but I can tell you that this stuff easily lasts 8 to 10 hours on my skin. I actually wore this to work today, and so I put it on at 8 o'clock before I started my day. When I came home 8 hours later, I could still smell it. Clear as day. Not even like, a little bit of a skin scent, but I mean, it was clear. It was crystal clear. I could smell it on the top of my hand. Just a brilliant fragrance. So let's talk a little bit about the perfume. I will tell you that yesterday's review of Overture Woman is partly what inspired me to do this review, because Allie, out of the kindness of her heart, sent me a very generous decant of Overture Woman by the great Anique Minardo, which someone left me a comment and said that Anique Minardo gave that fragrance to Amouage as a take it or leave it fragrance, that they couldn't tamper with it. I don't know if that's true or not, but I said in that review that that is actually the best work of the Renaud Salman era in Amouage. I used to say it was Silver Oud, but I'm really thinking it's Overture, Woman now. And the reason is Christoper Chong gave him the blueprint with this sort of liqueur note, setup, let's say. Amouage usually doesn't use liquor notes. In fact, liquor in perfumery is a very hard note to use. If it's not used properly, it can come across as smelling very cheap. And so I have a couple favorite liquor perfumes of all time, and this is actually one of them. And so for me, this is one of those fragrances that is very close to my heart. I absolutely adore this fragrance. When I think about animalic ambers, when I think about boozy perfumes, this is one of the first fragrances that comes to mind. I'm so glad to have this bottle in my collection. So let's talk about the fragrance a little bit, because this is a very complex work. It was created by Karine Vinchon-Spehner, one of my all-time favorite Amouage perfumers. She created some amazing work for Amouage. You can go check out my Karine. I actually did a perfumer's portfolio video on her, very well deserved. And so Karine Vinchon-Spehner has done some amazing work for Amouage, and this is the last fragrance that she did in the Christoper Chong era as far as I'm concerned. So basically, this fragrance, I think, surprises some people because they really don't know how to place it. They know about the cognac note, but then when they smell it for the very first time, when they first spray and they smell, they go, is this an animalic amber? Is it a grapefruit spicy fragrance? Is it mostly focused on the booze and the cognac, or how does this fragrance really open up? So the tough thing about this perfume to me is it really depends sort of on the wear. And it does change if you wear this fragrance in warmer weather versus cooler weather. But normally, and this is a very uber complex fragrance to me, it's one of these fragrances that if you are a fragrance aficionado, if you're someone who loves perfume like I do, if you're a fragrance addict, this is the fragrance, one of the fragrances you have to get your nose on. No fragrance is a must-own. We all have our own paths and journeys in the creation of our, of our collection. But this is one where I would say get your nose on it. If you're someone that thinks maybe Amouage lost the plot a little bit along the way, smell this. This is the type of perfumery that almost, will reaffirm your faith in niche perfumery doing something special and amazing. It's literally that good. So for me, a lot hits you in the opening at once, but there's a couple notes that really stand out. So most of the time when I wear this, here's the way it breaks down for me. I get grapefruit, okay? And the grapefruit, by the way, is one of the most brilliant grapefruit notes in all of perfumery. This is not designer grapefruit. Grapefruit, I think, has gotten a bad rep. And many designer grapefruits have cheapened the note to me, okay? This is top of the line grapefruit to me. I don't really know of a grapefruit fragrance that does that grapefruit note in such a way as Overture Man. And the grapefruit, what's so crazy about it is, yes, it's photorealistic, but it also does things that work with the fragrance brilliantly. And so one of the things that you're going to notice is that the grapefruit is extremely fleshy. It's a very fleshy, meaty grapefruit. And if you have had grapefruit, which many of you have, I just want you to imagine the grapefruit flesh sort of sitting in this semicircle of the white sort of husk part that holds it, right? And just imagine the details of the grapefruit, the grooves, the lines. You know, if you take a spoon and sort of scoop it out, right? Imagine sort of the husk of the grapefruit sort of just breaking as the spoon breaks through it, and you dig the meat of the grapefruit out, right? And so here, the grapefruit is perfectly balanced with the perfume and with a proper grapefruit note. And so what I mean by that is there is this dichotomy when you smell the grapefruit note. You'll get both parts. You're going to get the sour, bitter aspects of grapefruit, which is why some people don't like it. You know, when they drink grapefruit juice in the morning, it makes them go, you know, that sour bitterness, right? But it's mixed with the sweeter aspect, right? Because there is, imagine taking a grapefruit and putting some sugar on top, right? And so that's the grapefruit note. And if you pay attention to it, if you allow yourself to sort of really focus on it, it'll make your mouth water. That's how good the grapefruit note is. I mean, it literally makes my mouth water when I smell it. Oh, it's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable opening. And I think a lot of people get so caught up in trying to smell that cognac note and trying to smell sort of the animalic ambers and spices that they don't realize just what a brilliant opening salvo that grapefruit is. Remember, this is overture, and overture is sort of the opening part of an orchestra. I actually gave the dictionary definition yesterday when I did Overture Woman, but it's an orchestral piece at the beginning of an opera or extended composition. And it's also an introduction to something more substantial. And I really like that second definition because, you know, this is sort of the, and you can see sort of the curtain going up and going down on the overture bottle, right? And so this is sort of the curtain closing on Christoper Chong's career. I know there was another one that maybe came out right after this, and then that was officially the last one. But for me, this is Christoper Chong's last great work for the House of Amouage. You know, it has a little bit of a double meaning to me. And so that grapefruit in the beginning is such a brilliant opening to this perfume. And like I said, many people just think of citrus. Oh, citrus notes is just something that eases you into the rest of the fragrance, and they overlook it. And they say, oh, it could be citron fruit, it could be grapefruit, it could be lemon, it could be lime, it could be tangerine, it could be mandarin orange. But really, if you allow yourself to focus on the grapefruit opening, you'll realize just what a fantastic, brilliantly executed grapefruit this is. Along with that grapefruit note, you're going to detect, usually in the first 15 to 20 minutes, this extremely, again, there's two very photorealistic notes to my nose in this fragrance. One is grapefruit. The other is cardamom. And the cardamom in here blends with ginger, and ginger gives this zing. You know, it adds this energetic zest, you know, this almost like this burst of energy comes forward from the fragrance. This is a very energetic fragrance. Even though it's a heavy, you know, if you just look at this fragrance with the frosted glass and the color of the juice, you're thinking this is a fall-winter fragrance, right? And many fall-winter fragrances are heavy and weigh you down. This is an energetic fragrance. This is a fragrance full of youthful exuberance, if you will. And so along with that very photorealistic grapefruit note, in the first 15 to 20 minutes, you're going to notice a brilliant green cardamom note, okay? There's a touch of cumin, and the cumin is almost like foreshadowing this future animalic note that's going to start coming forward. But the animalic amber is there almost from the beginning, but it's playing in the background to my nose, right? So that animalic amber is just sort of hanging out in the background with the cumin, ready to come forward. And it does come out into the dry down. But one thing that many people don't realize about cardamom, for example, is that there are technically different types of cardamom. It's not just cardamom. There's black cardamom, there's green cardamom. Now, growing up in an Arabic family, cardamom is a note that I'm very familiar with, because whenever there is Arabic coffee, cardamom is typically used in the creation of that coffee. And also cardamom is used in many Arabic sweets and stuff like that. But it's that green cardamom that that I really tend to love. The green cardamom is actually the most sought after cardamom in the world. But the green cardamom is my favorite type. And smelling it in Arabic coffees and teas and stuff like that. Imagine the cardamom seeds sitting in the pod, right? Inside of the cardamom pod. And so with the green cardamom, one thing that you'll notice is that normally they will actually leave the seeds in the pods, because green cardamom, when exposed to air, it can dry the seeds out very quickly. So many times it'll actually stay in the pods for longer than black cardamom. And I just want you to, if you've ever taken a real green cardamom pod and sort of opened it up and felt the texture of the outside and smelled it, that is the smell of the green cardamom used in Overture Man. And it is absolutely brilliant. It's so realistic, lifelike. It is, you know, when you combine those two realistic notes in the opening, that grapefruit and the very realistic ginger, and then you add in sort of some of the expectations like the cumin, and the amazing note of cognac, which is the wow note in this fragrance. It is an absolute 5-star opening to me. The opening literally makes me want to stand up and applaud. I mean, the name Overture is brilliant. Like, you just heard one of the most amazing beginnings of an orchestral piece, and you just want to stand up and applaud, you know, and you're sitting in your best tuxedo, right? Everyone around you is dressed properly. You're amongst distinguished company, let's say, and you just want to stand up and give your, yes, very well done, Mortimer, indeed. You want to, you know, show your approval. Take your monocle off and just, yes, indeed, you know, sit down with your cane. It's that feeling. It's a beautiful, brilliant opening. There is some saffron in the opening of this fragrance, but Overture Woman, which I reviewed yesterday, and if you want my feelings on that fragrance, you can go check out my review from yesterday, uses a much heavier hand when it comes to the use of saffron. In fact, it's so heavy that I think the saffron almost gives the impression of like an oud note in Overture Woman. But here, the saffron is just part of the blend, and as the fragrance continues to dry down, you're going to notice more and more of these resins begin to come to the forefront. And so what comes forward is labdanum, myrrh, which myrrh adds a little bit of a, makes that amber note. Labdanum and myrrh make the amber note here, but it actually adds a touch of sweetness. So it almost smells like you're smelling a Papanax, like a sweet myrrh, if you will. And so if you look on Parfumo, you'll notice that there is actually no a Papanax note listed. It's myrrh, but myrrh can have that licorice, you know, fungal-like quality, and it adds this unbelievable warmth. So the fragrance stays very dry, but is also extremely warm in a way, if that makes sense. And it is completely vintage Amouage to me. Like, there are some fragrances where I'll smell it, some of the Amouage creations over the years, and I'll say, this is nice, but this is not an Amouage. That came a lot with the new creative director. I would smell something and say, it's nice, but it's not an Amouage, right? This is an Amouage. This is an Amouage through and through. And one of the reasons is the bitter touches in the top notes actually seem to linger into the dry down. So, you know, you all have seen the fragrance pyramid, which many people scoff at and say, no, that's not how people experience things. It kind of comes at you in waves and stuff like that. And so just imagine the bitterness of the grapefruit, and cardamom can also have this bitter coldness to it sometimes, right? The spicy bitter coldness. So imagine those bitter notes sort of coming down into the fragrance triangle, if you will, and mixing with these resins that are offset in almost like in tandem, right? Like the orchestral pieces are, you know, on cue, ready to play their instruments, And what comes to the forefront is this brilliant smoky frankincense, okay? Absolutely stunning smoky frankincense comes to the forefront with a little bit of cinnamon to sort of keep it in that oriental category. It turns smoky and makes me just say this is a classic Amouage fragrance. This is an absolute. This is how you execute a very modern perfume because it has a lot of modern notes with the liqueur and stuff like that. These modern liqueur notes have been sort of the they have been sort of like the popular thing to do, you know, in perfumery, right? So if you think about all these houses that are recreating these older fragrances, they throw a liquor note in there and call it, you know, a parfum, like Pacha de Cartier did a parfum version where they put a liqueur note in there, right? That sort of thing. There's a lot of examples of that. So this liqueur note is a very modern note in a way, but this is also classic Amouage, and that's the brilliance of this perfume to me. It stays very dry, Middle Eastern style sort of spicy index, and the animalic amber is just classic Amouage to me. The cinnamon doesn't join in the top notes though. For me, the cinnamon tends to come on stronger as the hours begin to tick by. So you're going to get like 3, 4, 5 hours in. You'll start noticing the cinnamon coming on heavier and heavier and heavier. And it adds a little bit of warmth to an otherwise very dry sort of composition, if you will. Now, don't forget, one of the top notes that really seems to work its way down into the pyramid is that cognac note. And so cognac, when used in perfumery, many people don't know this, but it actually is an essential oil. So it's not just some accord made by a perfumer. You can literally use cognac essential oil in a perfume. And it's supposed to be scraped from the bottom of the barrel in the oak barrel that the cognac, matures in, if you will. And it adds this unbelievable diffusiveness to a perfume. So actually, I grabbed this because now this is probably one of the cheapest cognacs you can buy. But speaking of our good friends LVMH, who seem to own everything in the perfume space, well, they also own Hennessy, Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, right? And Hennessy is literally a very special cognac. And so this is sort of an example of a cognac, and I'm actually going to pour myself a glass in celebration of this brilliant fragrance, if I can get it open, which I probably won't be able to. Should have opened it beforehand, but okay, here we go. Here we go. Which I don't always do, but when I was talking about this, there's a lot of people that like to drink during their fragrance reviews, but I just wanted to open this and show you guys sort of the proper brandy bowl, as it's called, and smell this while I'm doing this review. God, I love cognac. It actually is one of my favorite, but this is a proper, they call it a brandy bowl, or some people call it a snifter. So you can, going back to my Mortimer analogy, you can, yes, indeed, Mortimer. And you're supposed to sort of, the reason that this is kind of a cool cup is when it sits, it rolls when it's on the table. Hopefully you don't let it roll off the table. But in rolling, it sort of literally rolls the cognac inside of it. So you can, like smelling this right now, you can smell that amazing diffusiveness that really comes to your nose. And if you've ever heard Roja Dove talk about liquor notes in perfumery, he mentions, and he's, you know, rightly so, and I know Roja gets a lot of heat from many people who are not the biggest fan of his work, but he correctly points out that if you go to a winemaker, or if you go to a whiskey maker or something like that, and you ask to sample the goods, they don't take you to a tasting room, they take you to a nosing room, because literally taste and smell are so intricately linked, right? So the cognac sort of adds this, very dry, it adds to the dryness actually of the fragrance, and it also adds to the tenacity of the fragrance, because they're using cognac essential oil, basically. And so I've heard some reviewers say that the longevity on this is not very good. For me, easy 8 to 10 hours, easy, depending on the weather. And one thing about the cognac note, though, that's interesting is that some cognacs, when you smell it, you'll notice they're actually a little bit more fruity, and some are a little bit more wine-like. Others have this almost like yeasty oak liqueur-like smell, because remember, when it is sitting in those oak barrels, it's literally taking the, I forget what they call it, tannins from the oak, literally taking those tannins from the oak. And so just imagine this wine leaf on the bottom, creating this essential oil and distilling it, adding this extra something to this perfume, right? This extra diffusiveness. Man, it's been a long time since I've had a cognac, I'll tell you that. So the dry down is classic Amouage. It comes in with this very creamy sandalwood, frankincense, and animalic leather. And in this fragrance, I don't think they ever really properly listed what the animalic notes were. I think they just basically said animalic notes, which my guess is that there's some sort of like a civet, mostly civet would be my guess. But maybe there's just a touch of castoreum. Maybe it's a blend, if you will. And so to me, this fragrance is like the standing ovation for the Christoper Chong era. Even though it's named Overture and it's supposed to be the beginning of the opera piece. Unfortunately, this is the sun setting on the Christoper Chong era. And you know, for me, it is a standing ovation fragrance. It's a Hall of Fame Amouage. I love that animalic amber. There's almost nothing that smells like this that I've ever smelled before. It's completely unique. There are other animalic ambers that I could say, hey, if you like this, you could maybe check out this one. Like, for example, here's an example. This is Absolue pour le Soir by Maison Francis Kurkdjian. And Absolue pour le Soir is discontinued, unfortunately. But you can see, actually, the juice color is very similar. Now, there's no boozy note in Absolue pour le Soir. It's also much sweeter, okay? It's sweeter, and it has that very strange Francis Kurkdjian sort of, you know, plasticky opening. Almost like he wants to throw in your face just how unnatural the fragrance is. But if you like animalic ambers, you could try this. You could try, you know, Lait du Desert Marocain. There's so many other ambers, but nothing is like Overture Man for me. So, I mean, I don't give ratings on fragrances, but this is one of my favorite Amouages. I love wearing it. I get excited to wear it. I love reaching for it. I just think it is. I think it's a great sort of sun setting on the Christoper Chong era. And, you know, one of my all-time favorite boozy fragrances, but it's so much more than that as well. So, let me read you the little blurb Amouage had to say about it, because they've changed it up over the years. So now they say that grandeur, poise, and mystery, an outburst of burning cumin, and there is a little bit of that burning touch to it, and Arctic nutmeg, no clue what the hell Arctic nutmeg is, introduces a bold and spicy accord of saffron and cardamom, enlivened by fruity sparks of grapefruit and ginger. This impressive overture mellows into an elegant heart of fine balsams wherein the gourmand beauty of benzoin and myrrh contrast a nutty and herbaceous lentisque absolute, sitting atop an ambery pedestal of patchouli and labdanum. I think lentisque is like mastic is another word for it, if I'm not mistaken. And I think mastic adds this sort of stickiness, like it almost smells like it sounds. Mastic, you know, this very sticky-like feeling. The theme darkens as it swells, engulfed under somber notes of smoked frankincense and an animalic whiff of dry leather. Despite their shining, a faint glimmer of sage absolute and the sweet murmur of sandalwood. In the dry down, you will get a brilliant, creamy sandalwood. And I've noticed in some of Amouage's fragrances, if you revisit them, you'll pick out that very creamy, beautiful sandalwood in the dry down as well. Challenging and sophisticated, Overture Man conjures a tale of poise and a sheer sense of mystery. So the description says, woody and spicy, Overture Man is an instantly arresting woody scent inspired by man's solitude in the world. Dramatic, bold, and confident, created by renowned perfumer Karine Vinchon-Spehner, Overture Man is an operatic portrayal of a gentleman's mystique encapsulated in potent notes of myrrh, sandalwood, and smoky frankincense. So, to the great Karine Vinchon-Spehner and Christoper Chong, cheers. It is a worthy fragrance to say goodbye on, and really enjoyed getting to do this review. It's something I should have done a long time ago. If you have experience with Overture Man, please do let me know. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Let me know what you think about the whole Christoper Chong era versus modern Amouage and all that stuff. Very, very blessed and lucky to have the juice that I have here, and I will cherish this. So for me, this is one of their Hall of Fame fragrances. So love seeing your faces in the comments. Thanks for watching, everyone. Cheers, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.